hello. It is Thursday. It is the end of May already. I cannot believe it. It's Thursday. It is time for Let's Talk Power Live, and we are ready to get started. I'm in a hotel, as you can probably see by my background. We've been working on lighting, trying to get the lighting right. And one of these days, when something just froze on my camera. Let's see what's going on. There we go. One of these days, when I grow up and get really good at technology, I'll figure out all this lighting once and for all. But welcome to Let's Talk Power Live. We are so excited to have you here. Before we get started, I want to do two things that we do every week. If you are one of our subscribers, thank you so much for joining us on this journey where we talk about power and education in very real ways. And we do that through multiple lenses. We focus on different ways of understanding power in curriculum, instruction, and in culture. And we talk a lot to our middle school people. And the reason why I talk to middle schoolers is because I had a really bad middle school experience, and I didn't want kids to have that anymore. But we also know that a lot of times when people are talking about middle school, they're leaning into their own experiences like mine, and it tends to be a forgotten place. And I didn't want people to forget. And that's why we talk to our middle school leaders and educators and coaches and all of the people who are in that messy middle. And so that's who we talk about. And we make power in education very real, and we make it operational because we want you as an educator at any level to walk away with something that you can do on Monday morning. So to our subscribers, thank you. If you are new to Let's Talk Power Live, welcome. We love to have you. And also, if you are one of our returning viewers and we're still dating each other, let today be the day that you say, I'm going to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. But for everybody who's here, please go ahead, like, subscribe, share, put on your notifications because that helps the algorithm know that we are a show that people ought to watch. So I'm going to ask you to do that. I'm going to remind you to do that. So please, let's go ahead and do that. Well, here we are Thursday, and we're going to be talking about math. But I want to talk about math in a lot of different ways because we tend to think that math is only about numbers. And we know that it is more than about numbers. We know it is about identity. We know that it is about a sense of belonging. We know that it is also a sense of my own personal efficacy. So here's my question for you. Have you ever gone out for dinner with a group of friends and the bill comes and you pass the bill off to the math person at the table who's going to divide it all up, who's going to calculate the tips and let everybody know who owes what? Unfortunately, that sounds funny, but it happens a whole lot more because we have in this country decided something about math. We have decided that math is going to be only for a certain group of people. It is the quintessential gatekeeper that people decide who is a math person and who's not a math person. And so I'm excited to bring to our stage today a woman who I've watched. I watched her grow. I watched her change. She has a whole book out. I remember when she first started talking about this book. And so tonight's conversation brings me a whole lot of joy. And before we get started, you know what I talk about every week. I ask you the question about power. What is power in education? I give it to you two ways. I give you the capital P power, and then I give you the definition for instructional power. So let's go ahead and talk about this power in education. It is the instrument of democratic designs, and it is no less the instrument of power, the control of information, the shaping of understanding, and the influence of judgment are critical elements common to democratic design, power theory, and educational philosophy. So when we talk about power in education, we're talking about people who make decisions. All of this work around power in education can be found in my book, Understanding Your Instructional Power. I invite you to check it out. I invite you to begin your journey on understanding your instructional power, which can be understood this way. It can be understood as an educator's use of their state, district, and building ascribed job related authority to afford or constrain a student's access to learning. What on earth does that mean? For those of you who follow, you know that it means when you make decisions that open doors for students or doors or closed doors for students, you are exercising that those sort of decisions in between the spaces and places that Deborah calls those discretionary spaces. Deborah Ball calls it those discretionary places and spaces where we make decisions that may not necessarily be grounded in a specific policy or a specific identifiable practice, but it's something that I decide on my own that either opens a door for a child or closes one. And again, when I say an educator, I mean an educator at any level, principal, district level, superintendent, curriculum person, a coach, an educator in a classroom, the person who decides when a child gets food or doesn't get food. That's what we're talking about an educator is. And so one thing I also want to invite you to explore, I'm going to invite you to explore our Messy Middle Educator series. This is a leader-driven series. It is developmental in scope. Article 1 already dropped. Article 2 is now available. It's a 3-article series. And we are breaking down this middle school landscape. We know it's the end of the year. And we understand that at this time of year, so much is happening. But we also want to support middle school educators and leaders as they begin to think about the coming school year. And Article 2 is all about the discipline disparities and what happens inside the minds of students in middle school that might be causing some misdiagnosis, some misinterpretation, and some misunderstanding. So go ahead, the link's available, and we invite you to join us on our Messy Middle Development Centered Leader Series. So let's get into who my guest is today. My guest today is none other than Dr. Deborah Peart, and she's the founder of My Mathematical Mind. She is the author of Readers Read, Writers Write, and Mathers Math. This is a woman who understands that how students begin to understand themselves as mathers, right? I love that she's created this idea of what a mather is. It starts somewhere. And she's taking educators at every level on a journey for understanding what this concept of being a mather is all about. And we're going to engage in this conversation tonight, talking about math, identity, and the power of belief so that lots more kids can have affordances in their math. So please help me welcome to Let's Talk Power Live, Dr. Peart. Please help me say welcome to everybody. I'm so glad you're
here. Hello.
How are you today?
I'm doing all right. Always mathing, but I am a lover of reading and writing as well. And that's what I would hope for all students.
So let's break this down. When you say you're always mathing, let's give people some context because they don't always know. They know what a reader is.
Yes.
Right? They know what a writer is. Mm-hmm. And you and I understand like there's an ER on the end of the word. So the ER is the thing that you do in front of it.
Yes.
And so when you have now created a new word in our lexicon. So number one, congratulations. I'm channeling Frindle, right? The book Frindle.
One of my favorites.
Oh, Frindle, yes.
Frindle, yes. Literacy first.
That's right, because you can't do math if you can't read. So, channeling Frindle, you decided to come up with this concept of a mather and always mathing. So help us at Let's Talk Power Live understand what that's all about.
Okay, so first and foremost, a mather is simply defined as a person who uses mathematics to make sense of the world. And the reason why we came up with that, or I came up with it in a conversation with a colleague, because it was frustrating when I visited a classroom and I'm looking, hey, where are all my readers? Where are all my writers? Where are all the kids who kind of don't hate math? And, it's like cool with you, there wasn't a way to just attach mathematics to your identity and own it
Mm.
without saying you were a mathematician or you were definitely going into STEM. Like, and then if you decide not to go into STEM, then you think, oh, great, I'm done with math. So a reader and a writer is forever. Like you, once you become a reader, you read to make sense of information, you write to communicate with others. But math, I'm done with that because I didn't go into STEM. And that's just not true. And that's a societal issue. As you said earlier, we want to make
Mhm.
sure all students recognize that failing fractions does not mean failing at mathematics forever and you're booted out of the math world. Like,
Exactly. You're
unfortunately.
done. Fractions, because you're in third grade. You can't
Yep,
do fractions in third grade. I'm sorry. Just go ahead
you're
and hang
done.
it up and you're finished. Just straight
Exactly.
on through. Yeah. Just let it go. Let it go.
Yeah.
Which I am so excited that you said, right?
Mhm.
Because we're talking about math, identity, and this power of belief. So before we get into all that, one of the things I always like to do is I like to talk through some data
Okay.
because data tells a story. So let's take a look at some not so great information.
Okay.
So 2024,
Mm.
28% of eighth graders in the US were proficient or advanced in math, which means roughly 7 in 10 students scored at basic or below. And that's based upon our NAEP scores.
Mm.
What does that say about who gets to do math here? What does that say to you, given your work and your understanding of this?
Well, the first thing it says is if there's a problem at eighth grade, we have to look at every grade before eighth grade to consider how we can solve the problem. And I think when we use mathematics as a sorting mechanism, which historically that is what it was used for, there were certain students we were expecting to go on to college and beyond and run the world. And then there were those who we wanted to just be computers, human
Mhm.
computers. If you saw Hidden Figures, it was a
Yep.
job title.
That's
So,
right. That's right. It was
yes,
a job
it was a
title.
job title. And we
Yep.
didn't make the switch from just creating human computers. So
Mhm.
that is reading, writing, and arithmetic. Arithmetic is just basic computation. So if the focus was on basic computation, rote memorization, getting answers quickly, historically, if we don't make that shift and help students to really actually start to understand mathematics conceptually, then it's no surprise that the scores are not improving.
Right. And this idea of, because I'm working with schools in lots of different places and spaces and ways. And before we get to the next data point, this idea of conceptual understanding,
Mhm.
but procedural accuracy. What
Yes.
is the power in that? How can we help educators, one at the district and state level,
Yes.
understand that, what? Concepts matter
And
and
yes.
you got to be accurate because you
Yes.
know what? One plus one does actually equal a thing. It's called two.
Yes. Yes. And
So, because in education, what happens? We swing. We want
yes.
all procedure or all concepts, and we go back
Exactly.
and forth with the whiplash. How do we help this idea of balance? And what's the power in that?
So the power in that would be if you focus on just procedure, just memorization versus procedural fluency and accuracy alongside conceptual understanding. If you memorize something and you forget it, you just forgot it. That's just it.
Mhm.
You can say, "Oh, what was it again?" There's nowhere to go get it.
Right,
But if
right.
you have a quick way to solve a problem, if
Mhm.
you know the algorithm, you know a shortcut, and something's not working out, you can actually analyze it and say, wait, where's my thinking breaking down? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot this. So if you think about a student, say, for example, long division, multi-digit multiplication, there are all these rules and steps, and then you bring down, and then the dead monkey smell bad, and then the
Listen, my
zero.
arrows. I love my arrows. I
Yes,
still use my
yes,
arrows.
yes. But then if you don't also have that conceptual understanding, when you forget one of those zeros and your answer's off by thousands, which is totally unreasonable, you don't notice because, as far as you know, you followed the steps, you did the thing, you got the answer, and it should be correct.
You should be
So
correct.
the danger is that you might create students who are walking through life thinking, as long as I do the steps in the right order, I'm good. But what
Mhm.
happens when you forget the steps or skip a step, or you don't understand what the steps are even about? And fractions is a
Mm.
good place to, again, give an example of even secondary educators who are teaching algebra, and they're thinking, whoa, these kids don't get it. But did they get fractions? Because the true gatekeeper,
It's
it would
fractions.
be fractions. And
Oh,
what do
we
we do?
know that. Yeah. What do we
Keep,
do?
change, flip, do the multiply, cross, butterfly, and then we just do the thing. When do we do this one? We don't know if we
Right.
don't understand. So what's
That's right.
happening when we are
Mhm.
multiplying fractions? What's happening when we're dividing fractions? If we don't understand that part of it, just memorizing the steps and the tricks will not help us, and it does take away our power.
It does, because then I, as a learner,
Mm-hmm.
right, the person who does a thing that we call learning something and
Mm-hmm.
learning how to do something, if all you've given me as an educator are tricks,
Yep.
and I don't know the when, the how, the why, then when I'm in an actual situation beyond the four walls of a building
Yes.
without pieces of paper in front of me or even my device, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what to do
Mm-hmm.
because you haven't given me the necessary
Tool.
intellectual capacity building
Yes.
to
Yes.
ensure that we're doing it the right way or the way that's going to help kids learn,
Or
right?
the way that makes sense to them. How
Makes
about
sense to
that?
them,
When you're
right?
stuck and you can kind of find your way because you're putting pieces together, it's really about
Mhm.
problem solving.
It
And
really is.
we need problem solvers.
We
There are so
do.
many problems that need to be solved.
They need to be solved, right? And this idea of where it says an estimate suggests 20 to 25% of kids experience at least some math anxiety. And
Yes.
it often begins or intensifies. I would agree with you. I don't think it begins in middle school. I
No.
agree with the intensification of it because the
Yes,
mathematics becomes a way more complex. So
absolutely.
that brings us to our conversation really about that math identity. Talk us
Mhm.
through what does it mean to have a strong, solid math identity?
So, first of all, you believe that you are capable of solving problems in mathematics, but also it's sad to say you believe you're worthy. Because
Ooh.
yes, yes, because when you think about self-concept combined with self-esteem, one
Mm-hmm.
self-concept is, do I have the capacity to do this? Have I
Mm-hmm.
had success with it before? Am I being encouraged? What do the stereotypes say about people like me, people who look like me, people who are the same gender as me, people who grew up in the neighborhood I did, about whether or not I deserve access? That starts to fall under self-esteem. Am I worthy of being in this space? We talk about the STEM landscape needing to change. We need to invite more women and people of color, but is the landscape inviting those people? Are we, disrupting the narratives that say that certain people don't belong in the spaces? So to have a solid math identity, you have to first believe that you are capable of it, that you have
Mm-hmm.
everything you need to learn it, because then you'll stick with it. And for students, if you get the out because it's hard for you and you have a teacher that says it's okay, you're so great at other things, or it's math isn't for everybody,
Oh
or
my God. Right.
yeah.
We hear math is you, but it's so funny. Nobody ever
Never
says
says reading
reading
is not
isn't
for
for
everybody.
everybody.
Exactly.
Right. So we can go back to that
Yeah.
example I gave at the opening about
Yeah.
being at the dinner table, right, with your friends
Yes.
and you're out. And we are okay
Hmm.
passing the menu,
Yep.
the check to the math person.
Right.
Nobody ever passes the menu
That's right.
to the reading person to
Yes.
acknowledge their inability to read.
Exactly.
No
As
one
a
does
matter
that.
of fact, it's probably the best kept secret if an adult is struggling to read.
That's
They
right.
are pretending, they are making sure no one finds out that reading is a struggle for them. They might be going to night classes. There is something that is being done. And the
Mhm.
difference is when math gets harder, challenging, we often give students an out. We tell, oh, well, you don't have to take math after this course, or you can just take the lower class, or for your
Mhm.
major, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Oh, well, that doesn't really require a lot of math. First of all, every major, every career, everything requires mathematics. And that's that other piece is, what is math? Not classroom math,
Right.
math
Math,
for life, like
the
math.
capital M, right. The
Yes,
capital M
yes,
math.
math.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. That's
That's
why
the
it's like the
question.
math is always mathing.
It's
And
always
yeah.
mathing.
And where do you see math? And one of my favorite features in my book is called Where's the Math in That? And at the,
Ah,
yeah,
love it.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And I did interviews and included them at the end of every chapter with people who are in careers that don't typically, that are not
Mhm.
associated with mathematics. I have a triple threat. She's a singer, dancer, actress, has performed on Broadway, all the things. I have a musician, a lacrosse coach, just people who you're like, wait, what? If you're talking about math, don't you mean scientist, engineer, doctor? No, I mean, any career, we could talk about the math of it.
The math of it, absolutely,
Mhm.
because there is not a, and I think that's part of the challenge around a lot of our content in school writ large, right? So the capital C content
Yeah.
is because adults tend to parent the way they were parented, and they tend to teach the way they were taught.
Even if they hated it,
Even they
even if it
hated
hurt
it,
them.
right? They're gonna still bring that whole ham sandwich into the building and
Yes,
reproduce
yes.
it, put some mayonnaise on it, and
Mhm.
slap it around. The challenge is there's I don't want to say an inability, but instructionally speaking,
Mhm.
there is a challenge of helping young people see, I'm going to use this math in
Mhm.
this way outside of the four walls of school. I have stopped saying real world because school's a real world place,
It is. It is. Okay.
right? It is a real world for kids. And so I don't want to denigrate the space of
Mhm.
school by
Mhm.
saying real world as if school is not a real world place. And it is.
It
So the
is.
world outside of school does not come alive enough
Mhm.
when it comes to math. And
Right.
how do we, when we talk about a sense of belonging, so we talk about identity, we
Mhm.
talk about this sense of belonging, how do we help young people really understand, like you said, I'm worthy to do math, but
Yeah.
I belong in a world where like math is everywhere. Like I'm literally looking out a window right now and I see vestiges of math. I
Yes.
see geometry at work. I'm
Yes.
in a place where geometry worked,
Yeah. Yeah.
because if it didn't, I probably wouldn't be in this building.
Right. Exactly.
Like, I don't know if we make it that concrete where we say math is everywhere, the pieces of math,
Mhm.
right? You are in a classroom right now because math works,
Right.
and and geometry works,
Mhm.
and calculus works.
Right.
Right? You're at that traffic light, not having traffic jams because
Because yes.
calculus is real.
Right. And I think if we could consider that in school, we say it's time for math.
Mm.
But with reading, we're reading all day across all subjects, and it doesn't matter the content area. Reading across the content areas was a course I had to take in undergrad.
And I
So
have lots
writing,
of personal development on it.
right, writing across content areas, but
Mhm.
math is like tucked away in the dark corner and treated differently. It's learned in a silo. It's everything is collaborative across all other content areas, but then math, you need to sit by yourself, stop talking, because that's cheating.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
really goes back to the adults understanding that we have to deliver, we have to implement, we have to share mathematics differently, even within the real world of school. When students are doing things that are mathematical, we don't often point it out.
We
But
don't.
even there's an example I give. It's one of my favorites where my third graders use mathematics to advocate for themselves. And it seemed like not a big deal to adults, I would imagine. But
Mhm.
they were mad that every Thursday, which was chocolate milk day, the fifth graders and fourth graders drank all the chocolate milk and there were none left. So I was like, well, that sounds like a problem that needs to be solved. How can
Oh,
we
that's
use
right.
math to help you solve this problem? And they did. They interviewed the person in the cafeteria, how many chocolate milks are ordered. They did surveys of their classmates. How many chocolate milks do we need if this many kids love it? And they went through the whole process, put together a presentation, and went to the principal and they used facts. They used the information they had gathered. They used mathematics, but they were aware that they were using mathematics to advocate for themselves. So if you are always relegating mathematics just to the math block, then students think that's where it belongs and that's where it stays. And I'm proud to say my students were talking math in the hallways, at lunch. They were using math to solve problems. And even just say, wow, look at you. You're such a great reader. Wow, look at you mathing. I see you. You're winning that game using math strategy at home, in the car. Right. We don't point it out.
Same level of specificity, of acknowledgement,
Yes.
right? And because we do a lot of conversations with our middle school folks, why does it intensify so much in middle school? Why does the identity and that power dynamic that I have, my own personal power dynamic with math, it really begins to break down? What is happening in that realm?
That's a that's a loaded question, but I'm going to do my best to bring you the little pieces in this little bit of time that we have. So first of all, we have to think about, where did it begin? And it did begin in the early grades. It did begin in elementary school. And there's no difference in levels of math anxiety or math achievement in boys and girls before about age 7. Then around age 7, they start to see the stereotypes. They start to be encouraged differently. So even if you're a teacher who says something like, wow, well, girls can be good at math too.
Well, that two
right, the two is implying that it's not typical that a girl can do math, but look at you, you're the exception. So we start to impose stereotypes. So there's that. If you have very little success with mathematics and you don't have opportunities to come back and show, look, I'm doing it now. If you've been told that it's okay because you're a great writer or reader, you don't really need to worry about math, why try? So all of these things compounding are setting you up to believe at the core of your being, I'm not really a math person because I like art. I'm not really a math person because I ... I'm not really going to need math because I'm going to be a singer. Like all the things by middle school, when you're deciding who you are and identity in general is the focus of your existence, that is a part of it. But there's also the social capital that comes with being the math people. They're the fastest, smartest ones in the room. They're the ones who are going to do great things. And if you are not a math person, then you're not as smart. You maybe are not gifted and talented, and maybe you should just stay in the background and not try. The other part that we have to really talk about is elementary educators are wonderful. There's too much asked of them. But they don't have teachers in a lot of places who specialize in mathematics, and they've avoided learning more about how to teach mathematics. And even though the standards changed and now we are told you need to teach it conceptually. What did you say earlier, Dr. Tangi? You teach the way you learn. You teach the way you were taught. So sorry about that. And so many of us were taught through memorization and procedures, and now you want me to teach it and
balance it out, right?
I don't know how to do that, so I might shut you down because here you are with your little young, fresh ideas. I don't understand what you're doing, so I don't want you to do it. It's not the teacher's guide. So for years, when something makes sense to a student and they're told, no, don't do it that way, do it this way, it's like, well, math isn't supposed to make sense because that I understood. The teacher wants me to do it this way, and that doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. And that's how we get these ideas of new math.
Yes.
Math isn't new. Math is not new. Maybe what you're being asked, there's no such thing as new math. Can we agree?
Can we
agree? After you hit the like, subscribe, and share button, please let's just join us and agree that there is no such thing as new math. Okay.
Yes, new approaches, new attitudes, new
mindsets, right? You know what I mean? And here's the last thing, and we've talked about this. You and I have talked about this in lots of different ways, but 2022, the average Black or Latino student or student from a low-income background scored below basic proficiency, not just below proficiency. So what
Really? That's where you want to end with that. Wow.
No. We got some. No, we're not ending with that. We got some power moves. We got some power moves to get us out of that one.
Yes. Well, when you think about, the opportunity myth, which you and I have engaged with many times, many years, talks about teacher expectation being one of the greatest factors in how students perform, what they are given access to, what they're denied access from. So when you think of teachers teaching in a school with low expectations or believing that mathematics can't be done, high level mathematics can't be done by the students who's speaking a certain way, standing a certain way. And I like to say aptitude and attitude are not equal.
They're not equal.
You don't get to, tell a student they can't be in the higher level math class because they have a bad attitude or bad posture or because they roll their eyes and put their hands on their hips.
That's a different conversation.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean that they're not able to do higher levels of what we call mathematics.
That is correct.
The two don't have anything to do with each other. And this idea of our African-American students and our other students of color still being constrained, right? The instructional power is still constraining the access.
Yes.
Which is super unfortunate, right? We definitely have some real beliefs, because that's the power of beliefs. The power. I'm working with the group I'm working with today. We were talking about, coherence was our conversation. And I said, y'all are saying all the right things, right? You're saying the right things. You did a great job today, but you got to understand something. What you're talking about isn't going to come down to what you say you believe.
Right.
It's going to come down to what you actually believe. And
how you act on what you believe.
Not on what you say. Because you know this as well as I do. Educators are trained to say the right thing.
That is correct.
They're trained to say the right thing. There's a script that we all say, and I say it in my book. You said it in your book. Teachers are programmed to say, I believe all kids can learn.
Yes, exactly.
And yet, our data across the country says a different thing. We don't believe it.
We don't believe it. We don't encourage it. We give up quickly. Just the whole idea of, well, you can opt out because ... with mathematics in general. That's also what a lot of us do when it depends on where the student lives, what their background is, their parents are absent. No, they're not absent. They're working two jobs.
Listen, that was me. Look, by all accounts, I was a bad school parent. You want to know why? Because I was actually a school teacher.
Right.
I couldn't actually be
at all the things for my own kids.
Right. Like I couldn't do all of that. So you know what I mean? But I want to share every week. We always get power moves, right? Because power moves, you want to make sure that when people leave our show, they've got some ideas and some ways to move forward. So I give you 3 power moves. Here's the first one. Right. Build mathematical identity through competence and challenge. What say you?
Ooh, see, you're giving me all these good stuff. Okay. Well, okay. So first of all, my framework is comfort before confidence. And the C's in the framework are to build comfort, competence, confidence. Then you'll be willing to collaborate and build a community of mathers. So to build mathematical identity, first of all, I have to say out loud, the teachers need to do that work for themselves they can nurture it in students. And the idea we talked about of teachers being taught differently than they're expected to teach means that you have to build up your comfort with with these new approaches and practices. You have to build up your competence in the conceptual understanding of the math that you teach.
Right.
And you have to challenge yourself to do things in a new and different way so that you can build up students' mathematical identities. But the work first is for the leaders who have a humanities background, who are running the building, to also build up their math identities. We can't just keep handing it off and hiring the right people to support math. We need to be a community of mathers.
A community of mathers.
That's right. We need to change the culture and the language around who is supposed to do mathematics, who's meant to do mathematics, who's worthy of doing mathematics.
Power move number 2.
All right.
There it is. Look.
All right.
Look. Address the adult math anxiety honestly.
Honestly. All right. So that, of course, that was actually the focus of my dissertation research. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna make it real quick because I could go on and on
I
about
love
this one.
about that. That's right. That's right.
But
That's right.
addressing it honestly, I think there are two parts to this, and one part we don't often really focus on is the math anxious teacher might be dealing with some shame, some avoidance, and then they are thinking they're being evaluated at every turn, so they can't be honest about how they really feel. So we
Right.
need to create spaces for teachers to honestly say, I don't get this new way of doing it. Where can I go to get support? Grab a colleague so you can tackle the problems together. Do the work of the lesson before you need to bring it to the students. So there's that aspect, but there's also those who believe they are math rock stars. They always did well in math, and they look down on or do the eye roll because they don't understand why they don't get it. But let me help them also understand math anxiety comes in three buckets:
Mm.
being anxious about learning math,
Mm-hmm.
being anxious about doing math tasks in life in general, and math teaching anxiety is a separate category. There are secondary
Oh, wow.
educators. There are people who have degrees in mathematics who may not even realize they have math teaching anxiety. And it might look something
Wow.
like, I can do this math. It's easy. Come on, you can do it too. Not, okay, let's try another way. Let me see if I can show it to you in a different way to help you understand. They just keep
Mhm.
saying it louder for the kids in the back.
Right.
So that's not helpful. So the adult math anxiety goes beyond adults who are afraid to do mathematics or who are intimidated by mathematics. And then there are those who have solid math identities and they are awesome, but they might not realize the micro traumas they're causing for
That's right.
students and their colleagues.
I
So
love that. The
just
micro
saying.
those micro traumas
Yes.
that make me question my worthiness to do
Yes.
math,
Yes.
my
Mhm.
efficacy
Yep.
of doing math,
Yep.
and then I'm just not a math person. So
Yes.
all of that, I drill it all, I pull it all together and
Mhm.
drill it down to I'm not a math person.
Exactly. And
Wow.
and that's okay because we don't all have to be.
We don't
Don't
have to,
forget that
right?
part.
Yeah, no, and who said? Can we again? After you hit like, subscribe, and share,
Yes.
please go get your math friends and tell them to stop saying it's okay that you can't do math. That is not okay.
Amen. Amen.
All right, last math one. Reclaim mathematics as human capacity, not
Not giftedness.
giftedness.
That goes right to Born a Mather. That comes up in my book. I've got the swag because that is the real message. I say something that hurts feelings, but it's still true that elementary school is where math dreams come to die because little preschoolers, little toddlers, little elementary school children are curious. They are problem
Oh,
solvers. They understand mathematics. They do. They have a math intuition that cannot be matched.
that's
And
right.
we actually teach that out of them. It's like
We kill it.
yes,
Oh my gosh, there's so much that we do. I'm so glad you brought that up. When kids go to school, they go to school so eager,
ready. Mm-hmm.
ready to learn. They know that I'm supposed to go to school, I'm going to learn things, I'm going to learn how
Yes.
to do things. And they get there,
They're
and
shoved in
we
a box.
adults are shoving them in the box and we stamp out that cure. I mean, we do everything in our power to just stamp
Yeah.
it right out of them.
Yes. And some of my favorite people are 3-year-olds. And do you know
Oh,
why? Because that's all they ask. But why? But why? But why? But why? But why?
mhm.
And well, it always, the curiosity was there. And the
Yes.
adults saying, stop asking all these questions. Oh my gosh, be quiet. All of those things kind of just starts to work it out, work it out, work it out. And then you must do it this way is
That's
the
right.
ultimate killer
That's
of
right.
math
That's right.
curiosity. So there you have it.
Wow. There you have it. Well, this has been another fantastic conversation. Thank you so much. I was so excited when you said yes to join us to have this conversation because readers read, writers write, and mathers do math. So Where can they? Yes. Where can they? Wait, stand up so you can see it. Let me see. There it is.
Mathers,
Mather.
yay.
Love that. Where can they get your book?
Oh my goodness. You can go to corwin.com, Sage Publications, but you can also go to my favorite place, mathersgonnamath.com, and there
I
are
love
links
it.
there. It's also available on Amazon.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We went a little bit over, but I loved our conversation. It's been a pleasure. Again, go ahead and like, subscribe, share, hit your notification button. It helps with the algorithms. Get connected to all things Let's Talk Power Live. Be sure you connect with our Messy Middle Development Centered and Development Informed Leadership series. And I'm going to see you back next week. It's going to be June next week. So thank you, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll see you next week.